was born in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. And I live with my mother and father, and I live with my grandparents. I was born in 1949, and then later that year we bought a house and lived in Roslyn. I have no brothers or sisters. I have 4 cousins I was raised with, and we still remain very close. They're my family whom I stay with when I go home on my days off and other things. I went to a Catholic grade school at St. John of the Cross in Roslyn. I went to Abington High School and entered the seminary in 1967. I went to St. Mary's College in Kentucky, and after 4 years there, I finished my degree at St. Bonaventure's University in New York. I was ordained on May 3rd, 1975.
I was born in 1947, so I'm an old war horse. Well, my childhood and early life were in Indiana. I was born in Valparaiso, Indiana, which is a small town in northwest Indiana, very near Notre Dame for those fans. My mom and dad, brother and I lived in a small town. We went to St. Paul's Catholic School, where we had the Holy Cross Sisters. And we were very close to my grandmother. We called her Nana, my Aunt Laura and Uncle Matt. By the time I got to the 8th grade, we were moving to Delaware. My dad got a job transfer. We were moving to Delaware, and that's when I applied for the seminary. I was too late to apply for the September entrance that year. We moved in August, so I went to a public school, Ogletown Junior High, now Kirk Middle, for 9th grade. And then I started the seminary in the 10th grade. So I was almost, almost what they call a lifer, missing only 1 year. So I had 3 years of high school, 4 years of college, and 4 years of theology, all with the Sulpicians down in Baltimore.
Well, I was born 81 years ago. I'm the oldest of 4 children. Mom and Dad had 3 boys, and then my little sister later. It was a good time growing up. We were close to the church and the Catholic school. We would walk to both, and we just had a lot of good family times. We weren't travelers, but we liked to be at home and do things together. It was a nice time in the late 40s, early 50s growing up. I began as an altar server in 4th grade, and we were only about a block from the church, so if someone didn't show up, my next brother, Austin, and myself would be called by the priest who had the mass to see if we could come over, and for weekday masses. But I served mass from 4th to 8th grade when I graduated, and was always involved in the parish that way.
I don't know, I've always had a strong desire to serve other people. I can remember as a child pretending to say Mass with Necco wafers. And so, and then my cousins and I, we were post-World War II children, and we used to play war, and I was always the chaplain. So I guess, so God has something in store for me. I owe my vocation to the Blessed Mother. I prayed to her as a young child throughout high school and my contemplating the seminary. So Mary has a great place in my heart and in my life because I owe my vocation to her guiding and directing me, through my mom and my grandmom.
Yes, it was in Indiana that I first thought I had a vocation. It started actually in 2nd grade. In 2nd grade, I received, like all of us, a First Holy Communion prayer book. The boys got a black book, the girls got a white book with a rosary and a scapular, given to you by someone special. My grandmother gave me mine. And this book had maybe 20 pictures of a priest saying Mass, and then on the other side in huge print a prayer. So that was my first missal. So I started saying Mass in second grade, and I had Mass in English long before Vatican II. I was way ahead of the church in that regard. Well, you know, the seminary was a delightful experience. We began very, very, very strict. When I first went, you could only make one phone call every 2 weeks with permission. Our parents came one Sunday a month for visiting Sunday, 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And if your parents weren't off that property by 5 o'clock, you got told if they don't follow the rules, they're not welcome back. If I wrote a letter, it didn't go in the U.S. mailbox. It went in a special mailbox, unsealed, which the seminary could read. Our mail came back, opened. I don't think they really read much of it, but they could if they wanted to. We slept in a huge dormitory, probably 70 guys in one room, if you can imagine. 70 high school boys in one room with rows and rows of beds. So we had to have grand silence. So at night, after night prayer, you were not allowed to say one word to anybody. And then as the years went on, it got less strict and less strict and less strict. So in my final years, we were allowed to have a car, we could have a phone. But I think those early years helped me to learn discipline and learn self-control and restraint. So I don't think it hurt me at all.
My mother tells me I started thinking about a vocation when I was in 5th grade. My recollection is in 8th grade, I was starting to think seriously about it. One other of my classmates went off to the minor seminary for the Capuchins, and I went to the minor seminary in Catonsville for the diocesan priesthood. And that was a norm back then. At one time, our parish had about 35 seminarians, and which would not have been unusual back then. And for a while, I was ordained in 1970. There was an ordination every year, I think from like 67 to 75. So that's when I first started thinking about it. And every year I'd go, I'd come back home in the summer, I'd rethink it. You know, it wasn't a complete done deal until, you know, I just processed through the 12 years of seminary training. Well, you know, the example of my home priest, Monsignor Jim Cronin was the one I was closest to. He was just always happy, and he was doing God's work. He was helping people. It just was very attractive to me. My uncle was a priest at the time also. He later became the auxiliary bishop and would ultimately ordain me a deacon and a priest at my home parish, St. Ursula's. But we didn't see him as often. But Father Cronin was just a really good example, and I think that was why so many of the young men and many of the young women who went into different religious communities from that parish. I think that's why so many became interested. And of course, many dropped out along the way. And as I said, I'd come home every summer and just kind of rethink the whole program. And, you know, is this exactly what God's calling me to do, and do I want to do it? And I would, you know, reinforce my conviction each year, you know, a little bit more.
I'm the chaplain to the school. I'm in school all the time. I'm retired, but I tell everybody I work full time. And secrets to my priesthood, if anyone has, you know, a little girl asked me in the fall, you know, what's the job of a priest? And I said to her, I don't have a job. I don't work 9 to 5. I don't work shift work, and I'm not free on weekends. I have a vocation, and a vocation that God has given me to serve the people. And school is a lifeline. You know, the school keeps you young, and I read to the kids and teach and do all of that. The parish is a lifeline. Even if I'm not saying Mass, I'll come over on Sundays and work the crowd, because I love talking to people and listening to people. I read a recent thing that one of the qualities of a priest is someone who listens. And I think I've always been a good listener. And so I love listening and trying to remember, you know, people who are sick or their kids or whatever. And then recently the priesthood is my third lifeline. connecting with other priests and sharing the ministry, sharing time together. So I have those three. Lifelines, and the fourth lifeline is my family, whom I go and visit, every month or so to be with them.
I'd be happy to tell you about my parish assignments. My first one was Corpus Christi, 1973 to 78. Father Hamill was my first pastor. Father Reisman was in residence as the head of the tribunal. We had the old church in the basement of the school. Then my next parish was St. Helena's. That was 78 to 83. There, Father McGinley was my pastor. He was a big, tall, very deep voice. I was a little intimidated by him until I got to know him. He was the nicest, kindest guy you had ever. I just didn't know him. And then my next parish was St. Elizabeth's. I was there for 4 years with Father O'Brien. 78 to 83, I think. And that was a totally different experience because we had a grade school, we had a high school, we had the Benedictine sisters, we had a huge convent. There were 5 priests in the rectory. And then after St. Elizabeth's is when I became the pastor of Holy Family. So I was there from 87 to 90. My first time to be a pastor. I followed Monsignor Lemon, who was the 4th person of the Blessed Trinity. So I was scared to death to follow him. I thought, well, I'll never be able to fill his shoes. So then after that is when I became vocation director. So I was that 90 to 97. I was the vocation director, and I lived at St. Mary Magdalene. Father Graney was my pastor. And that's when I started helping out in Ocean City, because in those days we had enough priests that priests who were in the office could help out at summer places. We had 17 masses on a weekend. And this was long before cell phones and all that. That is when I became the pastor of St. Elizabeth's. I was there 4 years with Father O'Brien as the associate. Then I came back as the pastor for 12 years. After my pastor at St. Elizabeth's, I went to St. Mary of the Assumption. And I was there for 12 years. And then I retired in June of 23. I retired for 9 months. And then God laughed. He said, "You think you got a plan? No, you don't have a plan. I have a plan." So that's when the bishop asked me if I would consider becoming the administrator of here, St. Catherine of Siena. And obviously when the bishop asks you something like that, it's not him asking, it's the Lord asking. So I said, absolutely, Bishop, I'd be happy to serve wherever you need me. So I have been here since March 1st of last year.
I've said this often. My desire was always to be a pastor of a parish, the one thing I've never done. I started out in a suburban parish, 3,000 families, and in Cockeysville, Timonium, Maryland. Spent 6 years there. Then I was at St. Anthony's in Gardenville, which was a city parish, an outer city parish, likewise 3,000 families. And then I went to the youth retreat house for 3 years. I was hesitant and reluctant, but they kept saying, you need to do it, so I did. Obedience is part of the program. Spent 3 years there, and then I was appointed head of clergy personnel. I was 39 at the time, and 5 years later I became Vicar General and Chancellor, and had that job under 3 archbishops for 19 years until I was sent here in 2008. I found the opportunity to help people, to reach out to them and to try to make a difference was what I saw as the most important part of my ministry. Clearly, I was an administrator, so I was, running a business in many ways and had people working for me who were doing the same thing for me. But even as a bishop, I love celebrating confirmations because I did youth ministry. My first 2 parishes, I had the youth group, and then 3 years with 7,000 teenagers a year coming through for 3-day retreats at the retreat house. So I think just the interaction with youth was very important, and still is now. I still do some confirmations to help the bishop. And there were a lot of different challenges because of changes in the world, changes in the church, which everyone had to experience. It wasn't just the priest or the bishop having those experiences. I wasn't really surprised when the nuncio called to ask if I would come to Wilmington. A number of my predecessors came from Baltimore, many of whom I knew. I knew Bishop Michael Heil, who died in '67. He had been pastor of Govans in Baltimore. Bishop Thomas Mardiga was a good friend of my second pastor, Monsignor Tony Javolsky. So there were a number, I think 5 Baltimore natives from the diocese of the 10 bishops. So I wasn't really surprised. I'd been an auxiliary bishop for 8 years by that time.
My first assignment was Dover, Holy Cross in Dover. And then I went from there to St. Thomas in the city. I've been at St. Thomas, I've been at St. Anne's, I've been at St. Joseph the Brandywine, St. Joseph, St. John the Beloved. I spent 5 years in Hockessin, and I loved the ministry there. It was really good. Father Kempsky was the pastor. Father Angeloni and we all worked together very well, and I enjoyed my time there. I also spent 5 years at St. Elizabeth's in the city, and living with Father O'Brien, and even the present Bishop of Long Island, Bishop Barris, lived with us. He's a priest from our diocese, and so I lived with him, and that was a good assignment. It was a good assignment. So I think Hockessin, St. Elizabeth, they've all been good. They all have their good points. But this has been the best. I've been at IHM 3 times. I came here in the 1980s when Monsignor Dunham was the pastor. And then I left and came back when Monsignor Lemon was the pastor. And so I spent time with him. I was here for the building of the new church. I had my 40th birthday here. I've had my 50th birthday here. I had my 25th anniversary here. So I've been at IHM longer than any other specific assignment that I was in. And it's been great. And so when Monsignor Lemon retired, Father Bob was by himself, and I was living semi-retired, helping on weekends. But I sold everything I had in Jenkintown and just came back. So I've been back since about 2012 or 13, working full-time and retired, whatever that means.
Well, I'm looking forward to being retired again. And I'm looking forward to doing strictly priestly work. I want to say Mass, hear confessions, visit hospitals, have funerals, do baptisms, help out. That's what I did in my 9 months of true retirement. I helped Father Darcy both at St. Matthew's and Corpus Christi. And I was very happy with that. If somebody said, oh, by the way, Father Dillingham, this light bulb is out up here. Oh, thank you. Why don't you go tell Father Darcy about that? So I love, that was great. So that's my goal when the bishop sees fit for, assigning someone else here, then I will hopefully go back to full retirement.
I go to doctor's appointments and I do funerals. Seriously, I'm up to 7 doctors, and I'm told that I'm in the best shape I've been in the 16 years I've been in Wilmington. And that's all based on lack of stress. And but no, I help out on weekends. I still do a handful of confirmations each year to help Bishop Koenig. So I want to say I probably am active about 1/3 of the time. And at my age, that's about what I can take. I don't have the same stamina and strength I had when I was younger, and it's just part of, and I worked until I was 77. I mean, I didn't retire until 77, so a lot of years of pretty active involvement. I've enjoyed continuing to be in ministry. And I think most retired priests would say the same thing. Almost all of them, if not all, help out in parishes on weekends and maybe during the week. So there's with celebration of Mass, with the shortage we have now, it's very helpful to have retired priests. Many of them can help out in a couple different places on the same day. And so that becomes a benefit to the pastors and to the parish staff. I've enjoyed I do a lot of walking. I like that. No more tennis. Gave that up when I came here because everybody wanted to play tennis and I needed to be active as a bishop. But I do an exercise bike and I sleep comfortably. I sleep more now than I did, and my doctors say that's a good idea.
Well, my mother lived to be 92, and I'm in great health. I have no high blood pressure, I have nothing. I take very little medicine. So I'm good for at least 10 more years. That's great. And it's fine with me. And my student Russell is still going at 88, so I can live in his shadow.
The advice I would give to young men who are interested in the priesthood is, number one, develop a strong prayer life. Make sure you come to Mass as often as you can. If you can do daily Mass, that would be a bonus. Number two, get involved in your parish. Volunteer, do some ministry, learn the ropes. Number three, seek a priest as your spiritual director, your guide. Talk over your vocation with him. And just don't keep it to yourself. Share with people that you're thinking about this, and let the Lord work through the church, through the priests, and through the parish.
It's interesting how people comment to me that I have a facility for remembering names. Actually, that began when I ran the youth retreat house. I'd have 50 high school seniors come in at 3:30 in the afternoon for a 3-day retreat, usually a mandatory retreat, so they were not happy campers coming in. And so I had to get to know them to encourage them. I mean, after halfway through the retreat, they would be caught up in it. But I found that if I knew the name, two things happened. One is they were affirmed that someone so quickly knew who they were. And number two, it gave me some control. And it worked well for those 3 years at the retreat house. And I kind of focus on the person who is in front of me. We would go around the circle, and I would have some questions, and they tell me something about themselves. And it was, now I have to tell you, at 81, I don't remember quite as well as I did. I might remember the first name and not the last, or vice versa, but still pretty good.